So you know what, when I think about like Michael Jackson's Bad album, which was bad, especially for in the 80s, Michael was killing it anyway with Thriller and with Bad. So at the 1988 Grammys, I didn't know that Michael didn't win any Grammys. I kind of always thought that Michael at least won 2 or 3 Grammys that year for that album, but he won 0 Grammys. And it's kind of crazy seeing the videos. I was seeing different videos people had put up on YouTube and TikTok, and just the facial expressions he was making while he was sitting there during the ceremony was not really good. Not good facial expressions. He was not very happy. You know, even Diana Ross even had went out to give out an award. I think it was probably Album of the Year or something like that. And you would see him, the image of him behind the scenes backstage, and he still didn't win. And so it just was like, for me, watching that, it's like a complete shock, because that album, as we all know, that album, you know, especially growing up listening to his amazing albums, especially that album as well, it was always, in my opinion, like second best to Thriller. And the fact that it sold, like, it went diamond in, I think, almost a year when it was released. And then next thing you know, by the time it was by 1991, it was close to like 20 million records or so, or up to 20 million records that he sold worldwide. And Michael, anyway, as we all know, Michael was a big deal. He was selling millions of records. He had commercials. He was bigger than life. He was larger than life. He was a bona fide superstar. So when back to that Grammy night, you know, he didn't win any of the Grammy nominations that he got, which to me is a bit of a shock too, because for Thriller, you know, in 1984 for that Thriller album, he left up out of there with about 8 Grammys. He swept the Grammys that year. He left with all the Grammys. And this year to have 0, to be honest, for me looking at it, to be honest, it looks weird. I really don't understand it or get it. The metrics is not really adding up, because it's like, for album to have been that big, and I think that album was the biggest selling album of 1987 and 1988. So I'm kind of confused as to how he didn't win anything. But I don't know, I'm shocked about that. But I think this is also what led Michael to separate himself from Quincy Jones. And, you know, when he went on to do, eventually by 1989, he was doing working on the Dangerous album. He was working with, you know, other producers. And I think he worked on with a few people also that he worked with on Bad. But I think that's possibly why he and Quincy separated. Maybe he felt some kind of way that the music was changing. That, you know, as we know, the music scene is always changing. Like every couple of years, every 5 years, the sound changes, there's a new fad, there's a new trend, you know, new artists start popping up. So I think maybe Michael was in that mindset. And, you know, but nevertheless, that performance at that Grammy Award show was bananas. It was crazy. Everybody loved it. I loved it. I watched it so many times now. So, you know, it's one of my favorites. And, you know, I feel like that's how you do it. You know, if you don't, while I feel Michael anyway, he had the glory of sweeping the Grammys in 1984. So I don't think it was all that bad in that year, 88, because, you know, he had already had that experience. But when you kind of don't get that acknowledgement for something, I feel like it's best for you to just take it like that and just do your best to wow them and then keep it moving. And I think that's what he did that year. He just wowed the crowd, got a standing ovation, which is amazing.